name is PJ Clear and I'm Development Manager with the Disability Federation of Ireland. And today we'd like to talk a little bit about the public participation networks, which are in every county and every city in Ireland. People always ask, how can I get involved in local decision making? How can I make my voice heard in the decisions that actually affect my life? For better access to the environment, better access to training, transport, employment, housing, whatever. These are the real decisions that actually impact on our lives. In 2014, two very important decision-making groups were established. One is the Public Participation Network, generally known as PPNs, and the other one is the Local Community Development Committee, usually known as the LCDC. Today, we're going to just talk a little bit about the Public Participation Network in this session, and we're going to give you a very brief overview because it can be quite complicated, lots of subgroups and so on like that, but it's very important that you have a basic understanding of what the Public Participation Network is. So, what is the Public Participation Network? The Public Participation Network is an association that any ordinary community and voluntary organisation can join. So it's only for community and voluntary organisations that are not for profit. That's very important. They're not for profit. When you join the Public Participation Network, you can join under 3 colleges. The first one is social inclusion. The second one is environment. And the third one is community and voluntary. What that means is, if the aim or the main aim of your organisation is to make sure that people can be equal and included, if that's your main aim, equality, then you join that college. If your main aim is the environment, for example, climate action, then your organisation would join that college. And if your main aim is community and voluntary work, such as, for example, tidy towns, then you would join that college. So, for example, tidy towns. That doesn't mean that people who are working in tidy towns aren't doing an inclusion piece of work, because they usually involve as many people as possible. But it's not their main aim. Their main aim is tidy towns. Whereas here, the difference between them, and sometimes people get mixed up between them, the main aim of the social inclusion college is social inclusion. And that's a whole focus of their work. So what happens when you join? When you join under these different colleges, you are part of a process in the Public Participation Network that enables you to be involved in a whole range of subgroups and decision-making groups. So the PPN itself has a couple of structures and a couple of arrangements. The PPN has an administrating body called the Secretariat. This group is the managing, if you like, or the administration body of the PPN. And people who are on the Secretariat are elected from the PPN membership. So they're elected, and they're like a little, sometimes they're a board of management, and I'll go into that in just a moment. But they are a kind of board of management for the PPN. They make sure that everything is done correctly. They make sure that the meetings take place. They make sure that the PPN is running correctly. They also employ some people call them a support worker, and others call them a coordinator. The PPN, you'll hear people talking about the PPN coordinator. In about 19 or 20 counties, the coordinators are actually employed through the local authority. There are 31 altogether local authorities. So in those other areas, those other 11 or so areas, the PPN coordinator is employed directly by the Secretariat. So that person is employed directly by the Secretariat. So that's when they become really a kind of a board of management. The most important thing to say is that whether the coordinator, whether the money for the coordinator is actually coming through the local authority, or whether the money is coming directly to the Secretariat to employ somebody, the PPNs, and this is a very central part of the work, the PPN is independent. It's independent of local authorities and other public bodies. That's very important, because the PPN sometimes, the voice of the people on the ground, the voice of the people that are members of the PPN is what the PPN brings to the table. If they weren't independent, there would be questions asked about the mandate of the PPN and their representatives. Next. What happens when I join the PPN? Well, the PPN holds elections. So I'm going to put the PPN here. And the Secretariat and the worker, support worker. And the PPN itself interacts with, as I say, there are 3 colleges. So there's the social inclusion college, there is the environment, and there is the community and voluntary. The PPN elects people from each of those colleges to sit on various different structures. There are, for example, linkage groups on specific themes. The linkage group, for example, could be on transport. So we call it linkage groups. And each of these linkage groups relates to the work of those colleges. Those linkage groups include experts in each of those areas. They may be from public bodies, they may be from other community and voluntary organisations, they may be from people who are expert in, for example, transport. And people from the social inclusion pillar will be possibly involved in that linkage group. There's another linkage group perhaps on housing, and so on. They can be actually different types of linkage groups. Each county is broken up into municipal districts. And in each municipal district, there are members of the PPN. So, for example, in Municipal District 1 in County Carlow, there could be 50 groups, 50 PPN members. In Municipal District 2, there could be 100 PPN members. Number 3, there could be 200 members. And that's where the elections take place. The elections take place in the municipal districts. And therefore, if I want to stand as a social inclusion rep, I can do so in Municipal District 1, and the election will take place within those 50 members in Municipal District 1. So where When all of these reps are actually elected, where do they go? What do they do and where do they sit? There are structures in the local authority called strategic policy committees. I'm going to just go over the page on this one. I'll just leave that there for you to see. So what's a strategic policy committee? A strategic policy committee is actually very important little committee. Strategic policy, the word strategic means that you're looking at something from a higher level. You're not necessarily thinking about my back door doesn't open and I need somebody to come out and fix it for me because I'm in a local authority house. Mostly when you're talking about strategic policy, you're talking about, are there enough houses, social and affordable houses in County Carlow? That's where strategic policy committees come in. They're looking at the bigger picture for the county or the city or both. So strategic policy committees are usually chaired by a local elected representative, in other words, a local politician. And usually there are seats for various different people, experts in their field. Strategic policy committees, there could be usually up to 5 or 6 of them. There could be more of them in every county or city. And they usually work on similar policies. For example, some of them will be housing. One might be environment. One might be employment. Another could be education. And so on. There can be as many of these in a county council or a local authority area as is required for what's going on in their county. For example, near the coast, they will probably have one on fisheries. And the job of these strategic policy committees is to bring together various different players, various different representatives who can discuss the issues. Let's say, for example, we're talking about housing, and it's a housing, and it's called for short SPC. The kinds of things that they talk about at the housing SPC will be about, as I said, the availability of social and affordable housing. They might be talking about housing for people with disabilities. They might be talking about, making sure that they're accessible. And then they will talk about the environment around the housing to make sure that a person, just because they have a house, doesn't mean that they can actually get to the house. So they may well be talking about access to the houses. And that might mean them actually writing or linking in with another SPC, looking at the built environment. The representatives coming from the PPN, some of them may well be providing housing as a service provider agency, or they may well be an associated a housing body. So the PPN, there will be seats for the PPN reps from Social Inclusion College, and sometimes it might mean they might want someone from Environment, depending. So, or even Community and Voluntary, depends on the SPC. But what it means is the reps that are elected to fill particular seats. There might be 2 or 3 on the Strategic Policy Committee for Housing from the PPN. There might be 1 or 2 on the one for Environment. There might be on another SPC for Employment. There might be 3 seats, for example. So when the PPN holds its elections, it is trying to fill those seats. The next important thing to say about the SPC and the PPN is that what happens in the Strategic Policy Committee is brought back from each of them to our other structure, which we talked about, the LCDC. I'll be going into the LCDC in more depth, but the SPCs, what they discuss there and whatever actions they come up with or whatever suggestions or whatever issues are raised there, they're brought back to the local community development committee for discussion. And the people who sit around that committee are local public bodies who have a local development function, like the Department of Social Protection, the HSE, and others. There are also community reps, community sector reps. They may be coming from the local area partnership, for example, or the leader program. And of course, you will have people from the local authority. You will have elected reps who are, as I said, 5 or 6 of whom are the chairs of the SPCs, and they will be bringing back from the SPC the information. They'll be reporting back here. And there are others that are sitting around that table, which I will go into on another session. But just to give an idea that, so the PPN has elected people to sit on SPCs, to sit on linkage groups. Linkage groups are groups that are set up around specific issues. There might not be an SPC on a particular issue. Let's say, for example, there might be a new thing happening, a new development. It might be social and leisure, for example, and people don't know, or tourism, and people might know where to go with it. And so they might create a linkage group to discuss it, and that will also be fed back to the LCDC, possibly towards, for example, a tourism rep who might be chairing this linkage group. So the whole concept is people have come from the community to the PPN, they've been elected from the PPN to a linkage group or to the SPC, and what they're saying is what their issues are and what they're raising are being brought back to what is actually the key decision-making group in the county or city, the local community development committee. And this is a very key group. To give you an idea of the scale of PPNs and to give you an idea of the scale of the numbers of organisations that are actually involved with PPNs, I think it's very interesting. PPNs, for example, in County Carlow, which is the second smallest county in Ireland, Louth is actually the smallest, but County Carlow, the number of community and voluntary groups that are on the social inclusion pillar, that are on the environment pillar, and on the community and voluntary pillar, there is more than 450 of those kinds of groups in County Carlow that have signed up to the PPN. I'm originally from Tipperary, and it's the largest inland county in Ireland. So I thought I'd take a look and see how many organisations are signed up in Tipperary. And the number is anywhere between 1,400 and 1,700. So when you actually look at that, you realise that the PPNs are very grassroots. Every organisation, no matter how small, no matter how large, because they're not for profit, they can actually join the PPN. And when the PPN, it's not just the reps that actually have a voice, because in the PPN, they come together at least a few times a year to what's known as the plenary And at the plenary, all members come together and they talk about their actions for the year ahead. They get feedback from their representatives who are on various different, and even more than these linkage groups and SPCs. They can be on a lot of different types of committees, community committees as well, who are dealing with other issues. They talk about the consultations that they're involved in. They talk about the submissions that they're doing. In fact, the PPN is a structure which is recognised through the Local Government Reform Act in 2014. So it's actually a legitimate structure through which the public has an opportunity to engage with the decision makers. The decision makers here in the LCDC are the ones who decide where an awful lot of the public funding goes to in your local county or city. And through the PPN, an awful lot of our voice can be heard. There are lots of other ways, of course. People shouldn't just think that they have to join a PPN to get their voice heard. It's very important to always use your local elected representatives. It's important to engage directly with the local authority on various different issues. It's also very important as well to go on social media, for example, if there's an issue that is in your local area, to raise it. You can also talk about access issues. But you can find out, you can contact your PPN and you can say, we have an issue in our housing estate, we don't know where to go with it. They will tell you who the reps are on the SPC for housing or for the estate, so you can also tackle it that way. So there are lots of different ways to get your voice heard. You don't have to be a member of a group to do it. You can be an individual, but the only thing is you have to be a member of an organisation to join the PPN. That's the thing. But you can feed in to those who are members by explaining your issue to them. Remember, this is not about disability alone. Disability is across all of these. This is about the inclusiveness of a community. It's about access for all. And when we say access, we're not just talking about the built environment. We're talking about access to employment, access to education, access to training, access to all of the things that everybody needs to have. And so, being part of a PPN, a lot of our disability organisations who are members particularly of DFI, really you should consider joining the PPN, and if possible, ensuring that those people who are interested, like self-advocates within your organisation, represent your organisation as the people who are going to the plenaries or actually becoming elected onto these various different committees. That's a quick overview of the Public Participation Network, and I think what we will do is make it available to you if you have any other questions, we'll make a list available to you to contact your local PPN for more information and more in-depth knowledge. Thank you.